This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nash Villager Podcast. It's November 15th, 2024. A brand new device called the stock ticker went into use on this day in 1867. The inventor, Edward Callahan, reconfigured a telegraph to print up-to-the-minute stock prices on long strips of paper. For the first time ever, people who weren't physically at the New York Stock Exchange could find out prices right away instead of waiting on the mail or messengers. That especially opened up the stock market to people and businesses in other parts of the United States, like Nashville. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. A key anniversary for the investment world is as good a time as any to check in on some of Middle Tennessee's biggest companies. And, a few of them are in the news right now. One is WellPath Holdings. It's been described as a healthcare Goliath. It provides care in prisons, jails, mental health facilities across the United States through a large portfolio of subsidiaries. The Nashville Business Journal pegs it as the city's seventh largest privately owned company. And last year it had $2.3 billion in revenue. Locally, it employs about 200 people. And now WellPath is filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which seems both huge and complicated. Altogether, that means 40 different business entities filing for protection as they reconfigure their finances. Now, a statement from WellPath says the pandemic drove up many of its costs and that larger economic trends like inflation and high interest rates also damaged their financial position. To reduce debt, the company plans to sell off its recovery solutions business and reorganize divisions of WellPath Correctional Healthcare. Those are the really big moves anyway. They're anticipated to reduce debt by about $550 million. Folks at Cracker Barrel, on the other hand, are making a big point to say they've got plans to keep the brand strong for more than 50 years. Now, this comes as an activist investor is renewing his efforts to have a say in running the company. Well, I guess having a say is a careful way to put it. Technically, right now, Sardar Biglari wants to be able to name half of Cracker Barrel's board members, and that theoretically leaves room for other people's opinions and ideas to win out. But it is widely understood that Biglari wants to take over the Lebanon-based restaurant chain. He's been maneuvering in that direction for more than a dozen years now, and he successfully used the same kind of strategy years ago to take over Steak and Shake, so there is a track record. Last month, Biglari's office sent a letter to shareholders trying to make the case that Cracker Barrel is headed down the path to failure. It cites downward trends in stock performance and casts doubt on the fitness of the current CEO. Here's a direct quote. Cracker Barrel is in perilous times. Not only is a change to its board warranted, but we believe it is also mandatory for the sake of the company's future. This week, CEO Julie Fels-Massino spoke at a Business Journal event. And of course, as you would expect, she offered a different take. Massino described the brand as being right in the middle of the industry. Not a shooting star, seeing some declines, but hardly the failure Biglari describes. And more importantly, she took the opportunity to put out into the public the idea that Cracker Barrel isn't going to fall behind the market. Now, that's a delicate balance for a chain that traffics in a sort of nostalgia for days gone by, complete with antique advertisements for long-defunct household brands nailed to the wall as decor. If any business is banked on being reliably the same, it's Cracker Barrel. She outlined plans to tweak the restaurants, like adding new menu options, adding more comfortable seating into the mix alongside the hard wooden chairs they've always used, perhaps even replacing some of the decor items that some customers now perceive as unsafe, like antique saws. None of the changes she suggested were revolutionary, but you can't help but think she was hoping investors who got Biglari's messaging might also hear her saying, guys, things really aren't that bad. It's nothing that a few small course corrections can't fix, and we're ready and willing to do just that. And then there's a third company, one that is in a profoundly different situation than a chain restaurant. The private prison operator CoreCivic doesn't need to continually attract its customers. Their clients are states that pay them to incarcerate people at their facilities. They have 4 in Tennessee and a contract to carry out sentences for people convicted in state courts. And right now, CoreCivic is asking Tennessee for a $6.8 million budget increase next year. It's probably a safe bet that lawmakers will say yes. Now, their track record might make you doubt that approval is such a strong likelihood. After all, in the last 2 years alone, the Tennessee Department of Correction has fined CoreCivic more than $29 million over staffing shortages. Those same staffing problems and safety issues are the reason for a federal investigation of CoreCivic facilities. There have been a number of wrongful death lawsuits against the company from families who say their loved one died behind bars because poor management led a massive influx of drugs into their facilities, or because there weren't enough staff on duty to step in and stop violent incidents. But the thing to remember is that CoreCivic makes a lot of political donations. Governor Billy has been on the receiving end of their money. He's also called the company a very important partner to the state. The company's CEO, Damon Heininger, spoke at the Tennessee Republican Party's annual Statesman's Dinner this year. And with Lee now on his second and final term, political watchers predict Heininger is likely to make a run in 2026. In just a few minutes, how some kids with disabilities are being treated under a state law meant to take school threats seriously. That's coming up after the newscast.
You know how important WPLN News has been to you and your family, and you have seen how high-quality local journalism is necessary to a thriving community. You can ensure that this service stays strong and stays available to all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee. Join the Producers Circle with your gift of $100 or more each month and make the bold statement that you support the mission of a more informed and engaged community. Start your philanthropic journey with Nashville Public Radio today at WPLN.org.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. There were few surprises this week when the Tennessee Senate's Republican caucus met to vote in leaders for the upcoming legislative session. Randy McNally was renominated as Senate Speaker and Lieutenant Governor, a role he's served in since 2017. He'll have to be confirmed by resolution at the full Senate when session commences in January. Senator Jack Johnson of Franklin was reelected to his third term as Senate Majority Leader. Senator Ken Yeager of Kingston will also return for a third term as Republican Caucus Chairman. A treasurer, secretary, and chaplain were also elected. Tennessee's unemployment rate has ticked up, but remains below the national level. New figures put the state unemployment rate at 3.3%. That's next to 4.1% nationally. State unemployment rates hit a record low over summer, and officials say Tennessee has added 45,000 jobs in the last year. Tennessee's preterm birth rate rose again, totaling more than 11% of births in 2023. WPLN's health reporter Catherine Sweeney tells us more.
The health policy nonprofit March of Dimes issues what it calls a report card on preterm births every year. These stats offer a snapshot of infant and maternal health in Tennessee. On Thursday, the group gave the state a D-, noting that its rate got worse from the year before. The organization also criticized the state for several policies at TennCare, the state's Medicaid program, like refusing to expand coverage to low-income workers, as well as opting out of coverage for doulas and postpartum mental health screenings. The report included Tennessee's latest number of people who died of pregnancy-related causes up to a year after delivery. Tennessee's rate was more than 41 out of every 100,000 births, ranking it second to worst nationally. Catherine Sweeney, WPLN News.
Each year, 20,000 young people in the U.S. age out of the foster care system and are left to navigate life on their own. In Nashville, a nonprofit called I Am Next aims to help them with the difficult transition to adulthood. News Channel 5 reports the city government has given the organization a $7.5 million grant. The money is being used to transform an old motel along Murfreesboro Pike into an affordable apartment complex serving 18 to 24-year-olds who used to be in foster care. The new Greenview apartments will also have social workers on site. Now that Nashville has approved the transit referendum, residents can expect to see a half-cent sales tax increase this February. For months, local groups have encouraged the city to offset that burden by eliminating the grocery sales tax. WPLN's Cynthia Abrams reports that now the mayor's administration is considering it.
Nationwide, only 13 states enact a sales tax on groceries. Tennessee is one of them. But in Nashville, Mayor Freddie O'Connell wants an estimate on what it would cost to eliminate it.
The passage of this referendum means that it's actually something we can now take a serious look at, but we'll be looking at a number of things as we approach the FY26 budget.
But even if Metro cut it, residents would still be taxed at checkout. That's because Tennesseans pay an additional 4% sales tax to the state. And Nashville can't cut that. Last session, state lawmakers stalled on a proposal to remove that tax. Instead, Republican lawmakers passed a bill to let cities get rid of their local portions. One city has already done so. Hendersonville voted to lower its grocery tax in June. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
For the third year in a row, test scores have greatly improved in Metro Nashville public schools. Under TVAS, the state's system for testing, the district received the highest possible marks for growth this year, last year, and the year before. That means Nashville students have improved their literacy, math, and science skills more than the state expected. MNPS Superintendent Adrian Battle praised the result, as did Mayor Freddie O'Connell, who said it highlights the power of investing in our public schools. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. Kids across Tennessee are being arrested and handcuffed at school. A state law was passed to stop hoax school threats, but there have been unintended consequences, plunging kids into the juvenile justice system over jokes, rumors, and misunderstandings. WPLN's Paige Flager and ProPublica's Aaliyah Swaby have been investigating the threats of mass violence law, and their latest report reveals how it's impacting children with disabilities. Now, the report includes a case study about a child named Ty. Aaliyah, what happened to him?
So Ty is a 13-year-old with autism who was new this year at a middle school in Hamilton County. He's obsessed with Bonnie, a purple bunny that's part of his favorite video game franchise called Five Nights at Freddy's. The second day of school happened to be the anniversary of Five Nights at Freddy's, so Ty snuck Bonnie the bunny into his backpack without his mom knowing. When he got to class that morning, he told his teacher he didn't want anyone to look in his backpack. The teacher asked why, and he said, because the whole school will blow up. So the teacher called an administrator who called the police. They looked in his backpack and they just found the bunny, but the police still handcuffed him, patted him down, and put him in the back of his car. And the school called his mom, who was horrified.
Once you looked at his backpack, if there was nothing in there to hurt anyone, then why did you handcuff my 13-year-old autistic son who didn't understand what was going on and take him down to juvenile?
Ty was arrested because of a new state law that requires a felony charge for anyone, even kids, who makes a threat of mass violence at school. The threat doesn't even have to be credible for police to act on it. And Ty has autism and an intellectual disability, according to his mom and school district records. But the family's lawyer said police didn't even take that into account before arresting him.
Paige, is that how things are supposed to happen with kids like Ty who have intellectual disabilities?
No. So there's a carve-out in the law for people with intellectual disabilities that says they shouldn't get arrested. But the law doesn't actually lay out how exactly police should determine whether or not a kid has an intellectual disability before charging them. Disability rights advocates had warned lawmakers that this law would really impact kids with disabilities, and they fought for an even broader carve-out for all kids with disabilities that might result in them having outbursts or disruptive behavior. Jeff Strand is with the Tennessee Disability Coalition, and he was one of the advocates who pushed for changes in the law.
You know, our sponsors of this legislation are addressing a real problem. They're probably not ill-intended, but they're kind of cutting butter with a chainsaw here.
And while they pushed for those changes, that broader carve-out didn't happen, and so you have a law that just exempts kids with intellectual disabilities.
Now, you reported recently on an 11-year-old with autism who denied making a threat in class and was later arrested at a birthday party by a Hamilton County Sheriff's deputy. And now there's Ty's story. What do lawmakers have to say about the ways that the law is being carried out?
Representative Bo Mitchell is a Democrat who co-sponsored the law, and he said he hoped the exception for kids with intellectual disabilities would be enough to keep students like Ty from being arrested. But he still said that the law was necessary to help prevent these hoax threats that disrupt learning and scare students.
You know, whose level of trauma is going to be the greatest? The kids in the classroom wondering if there's an active shooter roaming their halls, or a kid that, you know, didn't know better and says something like that and gets arrested.
Representative Cameron Sexton, the Tennessee House Speaker and Republican co-sponsor of the law, said that Ty's case shows that there needs to be more training and resources for school officials and law enforcement. But he did go on to say that kids with disabilities and kids as young as 7 were capable of committing acts of mass violence.
Aaliyah, what kind of communication had Ty's mom had with the schools to try and prevent something like this from happening?
Yeah, at the beginning of the year, Ty's mom was really worried about him starting a new school, and she had messaged school officials in the summer to ask for help to make his transition to school as smooth as possible. And because of his disabilities, Ty has frequent outbursts and meltdowns in class, and he struggles to understand social situations and boundaries. According to federal law, the school is not allowed to punish him harshly for those behaviors because they're caused by his disability, but that law doesn't apply to law enforcement.
So where does all of this leave Ty? What's going to happen to him?
Ty doesn't totally understand why he got in trouble. When Paige and I met up with him and his mom, she had to explain to him why he can't sneak his stuffed animals out of the house ever again. The middle school suspended him for a few days. The principal told Ty's mom that if he said something similar again, the school would have to follow the same exact protocol. And so Ty's mom decided she needed to transfer him to a different school. Even though he's at a different school, she said anytime they pass his old school, he gets really scared.
Am I going back to jail, Mom? Are you taking me back over there? He's for real traumatized. And I felt like nobody at that school was really fighting for him. They were too busy trying to justify what they did.
ProPublica's Aaliyah Swaby and WPLN's Paige Flager. To read their full investigation, visit our website, WPLN.org. We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter, too. You'll get perspective from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories we're following. Sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up next week.